Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with the former world champion Terran in the red. It's Micro Jackson, ByuN, up against the powerhouse Zerg out of Korea. In the blue, the underling. It is Shin. In a best of 5 Terran versus Zerg grand finals on the new StarCraft 2 balance patch. With major nerfs to especially the late game playstyles of both these players, a lot of strategies are certain to change. But the way I like to beg you for likes and subscribes, not so much. And Jimmy, what are we? 1,473 likes on this video, on this cast, and I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways. I don't know what else I'd do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. A 1-Rax expand to start. Hatch first, and 2 queens on the way. And with 2 queens in production, that means 50 more minerals out of the metaphorical pocketbook of the Zerg, as queens now cost 175 minerals apiece. But hatchery is only 275. So, the car might be a little cheaper, but gas more expensive, which is a bit of an accurate, if somewhat convoluted metaphor considering the terminology, but overall, Zergs, maybe a few less drones early, because we all know they're not going to stop making queens. You're goddamn Brenda, stop. I know. Reaper still poking and prodding. Looks like Shin didn't make a pool any earlier than he usually would. So just waiting for the queen to come out and babysit the drones and lings. And ByuN, now some might argue he hasn't changed his build order in probably more than a decade. At least the numbers may change, the style, not so much. And third command center's already on the way. Reactored Hellions are likely to be the choice. The early to mid-game, pretty much the pre-ghost phase, I don't think is going to see any major changes. In this matchup in particular, you're still going to see a lot of queens facing off against whatever shenanigans the Terrans like to throw. Almost always some combination of Hellions, Banshees, and Reapers. But occasionally, Get off my tree! Good job, Susan, you got it. No, just don't be condescending. Sorry. Of course, ByuN being ByuN, does not have a starport on the way, but instead a second Rax. Lining up for a 3-2-1-1 medevac stim timing, like he's been known to do many times in the past. Other relevant changes, the Ultralisk is back to its original size, its ultra size if you would, though I'm not sure if that's applied in the current version we're playing, but also has increased push priority, which essentially means they can shove their friends out of the way more effectively. So now Ultras can kind of charge their way, not literally, but figuratively, to the front of the pack, and be a little bit more effective, especially considering Terrans might have less ghosts, or less army to back it up, because the ghost has been increased to 3 supply, as opposed to 2, which, since the late game for Terran versus Zerg usually involves somewhere between 10 and... yes, 25 ghosts means another 10 to 25 supply that is not usually invested in other things. And I think that Terrans will give up everything else before they give up those ghosts, especially according to the patch notes, but can go check out that video and the discussions around it at another time. Or right now, I'll wait. Welcome back. Third base landing. Armory on the way. Hellbat timing going to be attempted. Unless he wants to... no. It's a Hellbat timing alongside these Marines. A Roach Horn about to complete for Shin. As the Marines just kind of trundling across the map. Stim done. There's 4 Hellions. That first medevac. This, unfortunately, there are queens. So, with Roaches already on the way, Shin has no knowledge of this. But he's already got the Roaches in production, anticipating some sort of attack. Spots it here. Oh my, and here come the Hellbats. Armory done. Gonna try to take down the rock tower here, maybe lock down the third, but that's not gonna happen. Here come the Roaches and Lings. The Queen's already in position. And tanking the fire right now, literally and figuratively. But the Roach is more than enough. The Hellbats just don't kick in time and don't provide very much of a front line with just a few Marines behind it. Shin reading this well. Very important, Shin actually cut drones around the mid-50s. So that way he was able to have enough units. ByuN quite notorious for this sort of timing here. And I think Shin realized when no Banshee came across, how much did he actually... Oh, well, I think Shin realized that this was multiple barracks because he floated an Overlord in and he saw multiple barracks. For more hard-hitting analysis, make sure to smash that subscribe button. So yeah, that would have given it away. And now up to 62 drones. Not a booming economy, making a few more. But just being able to deflect that first pressure gives him a lot more breathing room than he would have if he had to spend more time throwing back the first attack. The age-old question of whether to build drones or units solved relatively easily by that efficient scout. But for now, the Baneling Nest infestation pit on the way. 1-1. Actually, a huge disparity in the upgrades. +1 Carapace will be done relatively quickly for Shin. Still a little behind the 1-1 upgrades of ByuN's army. But the +1 weapon still a long way off. So ByuN will have quite a window, especially if he starts his 2-2 upgrades immediately, to really take advantage of a tech advantage. Which, you know, that sentence could have been handled probably a little bit better, but hopefully ByuN is more on the ball with things. +1 Carapace, nearly completed. Hive is already on the way. Shin sprinting up towards Hive Tech. Maybe new patch, new Shin. In fact, Shin has been leveling up so much lately. He's now pretty comfortably the 3rd best Zerg in the world. Well, 4th, technically. We haven't seen much of Raynor lately. Honestly, until we see Home Story Cup, I'm not sure where Shin will land, but there's Cyril, who we haven't seen a single game on the new patch. There's Dark, who has been focusing... Well, he won the StarCraft 1 versus StarCraft 2 tournament, but I also haven't seen too many new patch games. And then Shin, who's been playing in pretty much every tournament lately, and usually doing quite well in them, if not winning outright. So he's got an opportunity here with Wardy's PTR tournament to add to that tally. For those who don't know, Shin, formerly known as Ragnarok, but switched to Shin because, one, if you don't have a 4-letter name and you're a Korean pro gamer, are you even trying? Maru, Zest, he who shall not be named, Cure, Dark. Though I did like Ragnarok. Honestly, I thought Ragnarok was a way cooler name, but to each their own. Viper's on the way. Tank push coming together. Quite a nice positioning here. Looks like Shin just giving this up, instead opting for a counterattack. Still no adrenal glands, of course, which didn't get a buff or a nerf, and still seems to be something Shin is definitely allergic to, despite being arguably the best upgrade for Zerglings in the entire game. Another drop of the back. Ultralisk Cavern is on the way. Vipers. Mings and Banes coming forward. Quite a brawl back and forth. He still hasn't actually taken out the hatchery, but the Marauders will finish it off. Looks like a small drop actually canceled the base to the top left. And Shin is knocked back down to 4 as ByuN takes a 4th base himself. +2 weapons done. More Vipers on the way. Ravagers push back. The tank's in such a nasty position to deal with. The Vipers are going to be required to help dislodge this. Another drop comes through. Near full energy Vipers. Actually, full energy Vipers. All ready to go. The base is almost dead. The Marauders just need 1 or 2 more shots to finish it off, but the blinding clouds can be devastating. Every single tank negated, and the swarms and the clouds and everything else is able to overrun. ByuN thrown back in the hatchery. Somebody needs to be careful not to... Oh my god. He started consuming the hatchery out of reflex. Shin. Oh, a half second away from disaster there. Not even Brenda! Nah, it regens. Yeah, like 1 a second. I've got time. Well, Shin with a bare bones defense, barely holding on to the hatchery. And the Vipers coming through. Still no adrenal glands. He gets to the finals of these tournaments, forgetting arguably the best late game upgrade Zerg has. Imagine if he remembered to research it. You know what? He's just trying to play fair. He's playing with a handicap. It's like a euthermal video here. Well, Chitin is blading. Almost completed. And ByuN, adding ghosts into the composition. He's nearly maxed out. Hasn't taken much economic damage. In fact, he has more workers himself. 77 to 70 right now. The Ultralisks, there's only 2 of them on the field at the moment, but they're leading the charge in forward. Vipers take it out of the sky. The crosshatch depots here, making things very difficult, but the Zerg have already overrun the base. ByuN, oh my god, what's happening? The Banelings are chasing down. He's able to pick up and get out. The Queen's doing a lot of damage. Third base overrun. Supply depot's taken down. Actually, a supply block out right here. Another wave of corrosive bows. The snipes aren't enough to stop the ultras, and with Chitin's plating, the conventional forces are going to have a lot of trouble as well. ByuN knocked down to 125 supply, but Shin not doing so well himself. He's up to 166 and building as much as he can. It's not like he has much in the bank. Very importantly for Shin, though, he was able to establish that top left corner base, and now he's mining from it pretty comfortably. Even if the creep spread is lackluster, he's managed to push out a couple tendrils of it and make sure he has some vision out on the map. And actually expanding towards, still no adrenal glands, but he does have chitinous plating. He has Ultralisk speed, which was nerfed, so that way the ultras, which are more reliable at charging forward, are not as devastating. Well, mostly to the Terran army, but Ultralisk speed, with speed before, they were faster. I'm not sure on or off creep than Stim Marines and Marauders. Slightly. But now, they should be around the same speed, allowing the Marines and Marauders to potentially kite them. Of course, usually there's at least a couple Zerglings or Banelings to make things more complicated. Shin definitely embracing that style. The snipes, though, unleashing a volley of fire that softens up the defenses. 179 to 169 supply. More snipes coming out. The Ghost EMP hits most of the Vipers. There's only one with energy left. A single Ultra here. Needs to target it down. Instead, pulls up into the medevacs. Leaves a few on the ground. They'll expect some of us in the wreckage, brothers. And drops down behind the mineral line. But Shin is able to keep the momentum on. If he can keep doing this, he may actually just take out the base. Well-placed Blinding Cloud actually forces some more units into it. Takes out the orbital command. And this is starting to be untenable damage. 5 Ultras on the front line. Another group of ByuN is taken out. The siege tank still finding a lot of damage onto the Ultras, lining up some more shots with the snipes. Planetary Fortress has 1 less armor than it did, but against Ultras, that's not a particularly relevant equation. The army supply is still nearly even. 76 to 86 in favor of our Zerg. The upgrades closing in. 2-3 for Shin, up against 3-3 and +1 mech for ByuN. So as time goes on, ByuN's advantage dwindles. Though Shin still, well, I'll let you know. You'll know when he gets it. But I do have to point out how critical not having I honestly do not know. Like, all jokes and memes aside, I have no idea why he doesn't get that upgrade. Yes, he's spending all his money, but he's built. He's already lost 300 lings. He has 100 on the field, and this is looking devastating here. I guess the lings themselves don't matter too much when the Ultras are able to close in so close, able to snipe one off. But there's 2 more behind it. Here come the Infestors. Oh, able to get a fungal parasitic bomb wombo combo. And not enough energy on the Vipers to finish him off for now. Small counterattack drop. May be able to take out that hatchery for at least the 2nd or 3rd time this game. But the 3rd base of ByuN is also under fire. The drop is able to load up and get out. Shin is knocked back to 4 bases, but ByuN is only tenuously on 3. He can't withstand another assault. He needs to be proactive, and he's trying. But right now, Shin's done a great job of keeping the momentum, and ByuN has not been able to fight back against it. The Infestors around the corner, good fungal. The Baneling's not able to follow it up, but they crash into the Planetary Fortress and knock it out. The Ultras coming in from both sides. Marauders able to chew through one, snipe, soften up others, but ByuN lost another base, and the counter damage just isn't there. Shin aggressively expanding with those slightly discounted hatcheries. ByuN unable to really, like, he's got a few tanks mixed in. He's lost 13 of them so far. Only 3 left over. The ghosts count at 9. Marauders scattered throughout. But the Viper control has been great out of Shin. He doubles up on the parabombs. In fact, he's only lost 2 Vipers, and I think they got caught by snipes. And now, ByuN. Another orbital command. Yes, the Ultras will be pummeled by the tanks, but the SCVs were already gutted. The army supply about as close as it's ever going to get, I think, here. ByuN going to try to force that decisive fight that will allow the bio ball to roll through. But Shin has not committed to that fateful engagement. Instead of fighting 10 ghosts head-on, he's just gone around every single time. He's already evacuated this base, though a bunch of overlords are feeling a bit abandoned. They're about to have overlord speed, which for some reason Shin will get before adrenal. I seriously do not know. I need, like... Either way. Questions for the philosophers, or maybe psychologists or something. Meanwhile, EMP, not quite. Ghost dramatically dies. Some parasitic bombs. Shin's patience, though. He has lost 3,000 more resources. But he's mined 6,000 more minerals and 1,000 more gas. So, overall, as long as he still has a couple mining bases, got some burrowed lings in the mix. How many orbitals for ByuN? Only 3. So burrowed banelings or infestors, still a devastating choice. There was an infestor at the watchtower, picks up a couple marines. At this point, Shin is content with Vipers as his only anti-air option, which is remarkably inefficient, but eventually gets the job done. Very simply, Hydras are a liability, and they cost a pretty huge amount for the value you get. Infestor, oh no! Well, he loses one, but here comes the neighborhood. EMPs hit every single Viper. The Ultra's leading the charge, though, and there's enough banelings to make life difficult and almost impossible to line up those snipes. The Zerg army rolling through. And the Ultras, too high in number to pick off one by one. That leaves far too many left over. And the supply plummets. ByuN taps it out. Shin rolls over it in game number 1. Feels like Shin he held. And ByuN, the most predictable player possibly in the entire game. From the point where Shin scouted those 2 extra racks, or 2 racks rather than just 1. He knew exactly what to do to defend. ByuN, one punch man. All right? He's practiced his one punch, or some small variety of it, 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 times. But you know it's coming. It's gonna be a bunch of Marines and medevacs, and then some Marauders and maybe some Ghosts. And the timing doesn't leave a lot of room to the imagination either. So, Shin handling that perfectly. And all without adrenal. Really feels... I don't think Shin / Ragnarok was a poor player before. It was just a lack of... Like, I'm kind of reminded of Clem, who was always incredible. Like, would always have breakout moments, and then some shaky ones as well. Like, remember, Ragnarok, not too long ago, was the player who knocked out Cyril from, I believe it was I Am Katowice, which led to Oliveira's fateful world championship. Because then Maru kind of destroyed him. But he's had these upset victories, hence his name, the Underling. But I think he's quickly becoming just a mainstay of Zerg. One of the very few, there are very few Zerg players who regularly play in these sort of, you know, non-premier tournaments. Cyril and Maru, they're both quite notorious for sticking to tournaments with at least 4 digits of prize pool, which, I mean, if you're at that level, then why give away your strategies? Shin, on the other hand, is ready to grind it out. And it's very nice to have at least one consistent Zerg player. Because for those who don't know, and this is quite a conundrum, I also go over this a lot in my video on the new patch. Protoss is heavily overrepresented at everywhere but the finals of these tournaments. And this one's no exception. But it is not rare if you have 16 players in the top 16 for there to be 10 Protoss, like 4 Terrans and 2 Zergs. And you can probably predict what 2 Zergs those are, and they're like Dark and Shin. Maybe Solar getting involved. So, somewhat unfortunately though, and thus the entire discussion, is despite that 10 Protoss in the round of 16, somehow it's already a bit of a minor miracle if a Protoss not named Max Pax makes it all the way to the finals. So. Sir, thank you. Speaking of which, we've also had several series of Max Pax versus Shin, which Zerg versus Protoss is... What is this? ByuN... What are you doing? There's a gold base. Yeah. Okay. It is called El Dorado, so I ain't saying he's a gold digger. Yes, I am. He's going to mine these, and since, of course, Terran buildings can fly, take advantage of that gold base as soon as possible. Now, you can go through the back door here, which is always a fun strategy, and much like Dynasty of the old map pool, pretty easily slip a couple of units in behind the mineral line, and pretty much deny mining unless they have a very specific response. So, we will see. The Banshee is on the way. It's not going to be just a bunch of Marines this time, but instead relying more on that Hellion Banshee. Probably a better overall strategy. Overlord hanging out, waiting for its opportunity. Last game, the well-timed Overlord Scout dictated the pace of most of the early game. Without it, Shin very likely would have taken a lot more damage to the early attack. And here we go, coming in right around 420, seeing whether he's going to continue to blaze through with the Hellions, or try something a little different. Starts Interference Matrix to fool the Overlord into thinking there's some sort of, well, into thinking it's cloak, obviously. And even though Shin is very aware that a fake is possible, you can't really, you have to just assume it's cloak. You can't get caught off guard. You will maybe not lose the game, but if it is actually cloak, you'll lose way too many drones that effectively hand ByuN the game. So, just the threat of cloak there, already serving its purpose. Building some spores, which did get a buff. They now do 20 damage per hit instead of 15, which in my opinion is quite a significant buff. Kind of surprised that made it through. It's more of a buff in Zerg versus Protoss, which is why I guess maybe it did. But as most Terran air units have ways of avoiding the static defenses a lot more easily than, say, like an Oracle or a Phoenix. In fact, if you see even a Banshee get hit by a spore more than a couple times, you're wondering if they're asleep at the wheel. So, that is the difference. One on the way both sides. A lot closer this time around. Shin opting... He has a lot of gas, but the lair is incredibly late in the grand scheme of things. 6-minute lair started. For reference, last game, the hive was already on the way at around 7:30. A very different style of Zerg. This time he's building wide instead of building tall. For those enthusiasts of more 4X sort of games. This is the more typical Zerg style. I guess the more lore accurate one, where the Zergs just kind of take everything and then build everything, as opposed to more narrowly focusing on tech like Shin did last game. But of course, it still leaves an opportunity for Zerglings to get a lot done. Surrounds one of the Hellions, takes it out, but the Banshees will repel the rest. Shin only 67 drones for now, but adding a few more on. The Queens pushing back the Banshees. And it's pretty clear at this point that there's not actually Cloak. Not that it's... Okay, well, there's so many creep tumors, even if the Reaper didn't need detection, it would be almost impossible to take them all out. Hydralisk Den is on the way. Combat shield completed, as ByuN has put together a strong early game push, and there's no Baneling speed. Without it, even on creep, a precarious situation for the Zerg. But 1-1's not done yet for either side. The Hellbats are pushing forward. That tank is in a nasty position. Hellbats. 1-1 is now completed. So hitting this very thin yet effective window. Pulling back, the Banelings closing in, but not all of them can make it. Wow, the Queens! And don't come back! So they can't hear you. And also, how can we even understand each other? That really, linguistically, that doesn't make much sense. 1, Brenda, it's called psionics. And 2, it's well above your pay grade. We don't get paid at all. Exactly. ByuN getting slammed by some more Banelings. But the first push getting shut down, and the fact that Shin is already on 4 hatcheries comfortably means he should have enough to throw back any more pushes, at least until ByuN gets some more upgrades, which he hasn't started at all. He's put himself on the timer, on a timer here. We're adding 3 more barracks in, but doesn't have 2 too. So focused entirely on getting the damage done, but he gunned down every single Baneling. Reinforcements on the way. The Hydra is trying to take out the medevac, but ByuN, without Banelings to contest him, in a precarious position indeed. Shin, oh, the Banshees adding some damage to the top left corner. Another attack to the south, but Shin has secured both sides with Hydras and Lings. ByuN mining off the gold base. Shin takes an income lead, but if you look at the y-axis, 400 resources a minute is not a massive advantage at all. And it's barely 1/3 of a fully mining base. Notably, no infestation pit, but ByuN's delayed 2-2 upgrades are going to define the next few minutes of the game. Down goes another Banshee. And Shin's going to max out with Hydraling Bane and superior upgrades. The only saving grace, and it's a big one here for ByuN, is how hard it is to attack reliably on this map. That 4th base being in the center as opposed to on the southern side may be helpful. Shin will have a more obvious target, but ByuN's actually moving forward. But the Whittle Mines find some real damage. And now 2-2's done, though. And with that upgrade advantage, Shin can leverage it, potentially all the way across the map. ByuN actually opened up the center wall. Gonna lose another group of Marines. Trying to pull back into the minefield. The mines will connect, despite the cameraman not doing so. Firing over the top of the minerals. Only the Hydras versus Marine Marauder. More than enough Marine Marauder to hold for now, but ByuN now vulnerable to the much stronger Zerg army, trying to outmaneuver. Doing a great job so far. To be very careful, loses 2 medevacs. Almost a 1/3. More Zerglings deny one of the bases. Planetary Fortress wasn't started, and honestly, ByuN dropping the ball here on multiple fronts. Shin picking it up and rolling with it. Hydras, ping cushioning any SCV. Small drop at the back. Shin will deal with it. The Hive just started, but right now Shin still has the army to beat. It's disjointed throughout the entire map. He's got the Hydras, Lings, and Banes to the south and the north. And in fact, ByuN's drops, I think, have kept the Zerg at bay for long enough for ByuN to finish up his 2-2 upgrades, which is a big deal at this stage, as Shin is only halfway through his Hive. He didn't follow it up, so now Shin is the one who's delayed the next step, the next progression, in order to maximize his standing army. But another couple dozen Banelings hitting the field, but that's a lot of bio. 127 to 117 supply. Another Widowmine connects. Doesn't find the damage it needs. Onto the creep, the Terran army goes. Clears out some more of the creep tumors. Gonna knock out another base. Hydras and Links. Planetary Fortress completes just in time to maybe repel this. Going up the ramp. Big base trade. Double drop at the back of the third. The fourth, the Planetary is overrun. Reinforcements are all that's going to be left to contest this. Hydra was dead under fire. Medevac's desperately trying to heal, but autumn colors for most of the Marines and Marauders. And speaking of, here come the Banelings. Widowmines connect. Soften up the Zerglings at the front, but he goes the wrong way! Oh no, the path not found! And suddenly ByuN, he loses 27 SCVs. The war of attrition is being won by Shin. Yes, a few mines will slow things down, but he lost the outlying base. He lost a lot of SCVs, and Shin still has the hive on the way. He was able to keep at least 2 of those bases intact. He lost the Hydra Den, but Lings and Banes will serve their purpose here. And oh no, trapped in a prison of their own design. I'm surprised that any SCVs survived that and actually mined through enough of these minerals to head to the other side. It's not over yet, because ByuN still has the army supply, and again, he doesn't have the upgrades on the way. No adrenal glands for Shin, but he has pretty much the rest of the hive tech in production. The Widowmines now have drilling claws, meaning they require detection in order to clear out. Small counterattack as Zerglings. ByuN pressing the issue. The SCVs are fighting. Not exactly the ideal choice for them. Clearing up 6 more. But ByuN's army supply is the danger. There's still so many Lings and Banes, though. He's got to try to burrow those mines. And Shin handles it. It could have been better, but it certainly could have been worse. And ByuN is on borrowed time. Shin now with a 2k resource advantage. Army supplies still. ByuN with a slight edge, but as soon as the Ultras complete, that edge will be dulled significantly. Infestors as well. Time is not on ByuN's side. Another stim. I wonder how many stims throughout the game. Too many and not enough. Queen taken out, but kiting back. Not going for Hydra Lurch, Lunge, Neuromuscular Swell, the upgrade, but another drop makes it by, and really manipulating the map. Even with so much of it mined out and accessible, it's still very hard for the Zerg army to pin this down. But it looks like Ultras may be the killing blow, if there is to be one yet again. It's hard to see ByuN contesting the Ultras directly, but he's whittled Shin down to 1.5 mining bases. He's still got orbital commands that can fly. In fact, his main base floated over. Gonna drop down at the center line, and the bio... How does he... He has so much Terran. Still Widowmines out on the field. A big hit from a mine or two to soften up the Banelings, and maybe from there. There is no Ghost Academy. So the Ultra's still an existential threat. Widowmine dealt with. There's a handful of Overseers. And the Bio army to the north. He has massive armies on both sides. There's only one Ultra to contest. Ultra speed is not done. Another army coming up. A lot of Infestors here. He kites through the mineral line, but the Fungals over the top. And the Ultra's cleaving through. The Terran army is ripped to shreds, I say. Meanwhile, though, ByuN with a full-on counterattack will knock out a base. Workers being slaughtered on either side. Supplies plummeting precipitously. The Terran army still tearing through, but the Zerg army swarming together. ByuN making the only play he can at this stage. And, well, with 3-4 Ultras, there's almost no more reinforcements coming across. Still some Widowmines. Banelings, 1 gone. More Banelings on the way. The Baneling nest itself was taken up, and here come the Infestors. Oh no! But the Ultra, despite the push priority, still struggling its way down the ramp. Just enough Banelings. That one Ultra leading the charge. ByuN down to 60 supply, and Shin holds on. Wow, that was a lot closer than I thought it would be. By the end of it, Shin eventually, and another key point, ByuN never got 3-3 upgrades. He was at 0 SCVs when the game was over. But eventually the Ultralisks were enough. But oh my. Shin goes up 2-0, but both of these games have rested on the very edge of an Ultralisk blade. And could have tilted the other way if ByuN gets just a little more momentum. That Terran army still an existential threat, even without the ghosts. The Ultra's so dangerous yet. Well, here we are. Game 3, Amygdala. Match point potentially for the increasingly dangerous Zerg player. I think that's the big difference, is it's so easy to fall apart as Zerg in that scenario. When you've got 50, 60 supply of Terran bio rolling through the opposite side of the map, it's so easy to just say, oh Shin, and just go for it. And then when they eventually whittle down your attacking army, they can press the base trade all the way through. But Shin did a plaudable job of mitigating the damage back at home while still doing anything on the side of the map. Because you can't let them just mine. And ByuN, in typical ByuN fashion, is wielding the same sort of style and same sort of units and still making it look almost plausible. Like, he's down 2 upgrades against Ultras without ghosts and still so dangerous. But it's hard to tell how much the buff to the Ultras is going to make a difference here. I think Game 1 was a big demonstration of how they may very well be a strong choice, but they do always feel like a win more. Whereas the Ghost costing 50% more supply, I think is, and 50% makes it, I don't know if it makes it sound more dramatic than 2 to 3. I think working in percentages usually sounds more dramatic, but I digress. You can add infinitely more likes to this video by smashing that button today. Wow, that's infinity percent. Okay, that just sounds silly. But all right, working on the rocks here on Amygdala. Quite a rush distance, despite not being a huge map. You have to go all the way around. This isn't the Zerg Eggs version, which I think is going to be the final one, but I think so far a good series to demonstrate. Well, that TVZ not suffering, that might be the wrong word, but not going through a massive change, especially in the early mid game. That sort of swarm versus marine tank back and forth will still very much be a staple of the matchup. But the late game, I always feel like Zerg versus Terran, even in the previous patch, is much more map dependent than it is actual unit composition dependent. While Ghosts, a staple of the late game to counter gestures wildly at Zerg. If you can't reliably hold on to a 4th base as Terran, you will get run down eventually. This is the reason why Post-Youth was actually the strongest map for Zerg in the last map pool against Terran, is because there is no 4th base you can take safely on that map. It is always vulnerable to getting overrun, as it was either the center gold base area, which is on the low ground and can be attacked from multiple sides, or a relatively wide open option on a very short rush distance. So that is the biggest definition of a map that Zerg can strongly deal with Terran, whereas Dynasty, for example, was the most heavily Terran favored against Zerg. A map where you pretty much get 3 bases for free and your 4th base is protected from multiple angles. So a combination of it being almost impossible for Zerg to expand safely and Terrans to be able to get that 4th and lock it down, combined to make a strong late game Terran map. And the easier it is to hold on to your 4th base, the more of your army supply you can send out and not have back at home to defend. And that's why the nerf to the Ghost is such a big deal in this matchup and less than Terran versus Protoss, because the sheer number of ghosts you need is much higher. This time it is Cloak, which Shin appears, he's building an anti-Liberator Spore. You build it behind the mineral line to deal with Liberators. So the delayed Cloak Banshee finding a surprising amount of success. 6 kills so far. ByuN? Oh, is this a 2 base? Is that why? Yeah. Okay, so Brenda, come back! Why did they get to fly? That... Wow, 12 drones dead. It's kind of needed. So, and there's a roach. The roach is knocking on the door. Where's the nearest Banshee? Floating back home now. Well, this is certainly awkward. More Hellions in the natural. Gonna find a few more kills. Incinerating another lot of drones. The roaches are in the natural of ByuN, but unlikely to get quite the same level of damage. Cleaned up now. So they brawl it out. But because ByuN didn't have a 3rd command center, I think that damage... Well, you could already tell in the worker count. Shin suffers 22 drone losses and plummets to a 12-worker lead. So, he saw it was Cloak Banshee. He got in, he saw there was not a tank, there's not that many Marines. Shin is feeling entirely confident to build up a huge amount of drones because there's no follow-up here. The 2-base Hellion Banshee is required to get damage done. And he did, he succeeded. But there's not much of a follow. ByuN right now is trying to... This is such a bluff. I think he's going to call it too. Like, he has a dozen Stim Marines. He's actually going to delay the 4th hatchery. He's going to kill the 4th hatchery, which not quite the impact it once was. It's only 275 minerals down now. But... Really kind of an unforced error there. I guess a little forced error, but there's plenty of time to cancel. The Queens getting caught. He goes into Spore range, though, and the Queens will take out 1 Banshee and leave another badly bruised. The Marines actually working forward now with the help of the Medivacs and +1 upgrades. They became a lot more dangerous here. Gonna stutter step past. Stims again. Finally, yeah. 207 minerals you get for canceling nowadays. 3/4 back. And take some getting used to. Infestation pit. And Zergling speed. Shin went with the mass drone, almost no gas into roaches, but is now looking to fill in lings and probably banelings. There you go. Now adding on the baneling nest. The roaches. Roaches and Ravagers coming around the rocks. And 1 Marine. Nope. No man left behind. ByuN keeping the pressure on. This map so hard to attack directly on the ground that Shin hasn't even really bothered except for that early roach counterattack. He's just gonna max out with as much tech as possible and try to smash ByuN's 4th. Unfortunately, but a bug in my... The bugs are on the screen. I choose to believe he meant like some sort of like literal bug. Like a fly is now floating around inside his case. The brood... Karma for the Broodlord bug, but moving on after that small conundrum. So many banelings. A couple dozen in production. Baneling speed as well, but ByuN comfortably working towards his 4th base. The siege tanks in position. Roaches gonna drive away the Zerglings. And Ravager Ling Bane. Only +1, +2. And just starting those upgrades for Shin. Whereas ByuN is already well on the way to +2 infantry weapons and armor. Ultralisk Cavern is yet again on the way. The Zerglings closing in, even without Bane Speed, just going for it here. Shin trying to smash his way through, and he's so desperate to do so, he gets adrenal glands for the first time this series. Wow. The single most important upgrade for Zerglings, and this time around Shin taking it very serious. Another wave of corrosive bell rained down on the SCVs at the gold base. Yet another map with the gold base can be assaulted from either side, though obviously still quite a benefit. Oh, Whittle Mines almost connect on a big group of Banelings, but the creep spread is looking dangerous here. He has most of his side of the map and is spreading out to the sides as well. Oh, Whittle Mines connect. Another wave of corrosive bow scattered throughout the mineral line, backs off. 4 SCVs already dead. Double drop headed towards the third. A lot of hive tech starting to kick in as the roaches come back to defend against the drop. Drilling Claw is now done. Almost loses that medevac. +2 infantry weapons and armor nearly completed. Few Banelings easily dealt with. Knocks out a medevac and a mine, 2 for the price of 1. Adrenal glands nearly done, +1 melee as well. Single Baneling. Whittle Mine almost connects, but knocks it out. Only takes 2 corrosive biles to melt through. 2 more command centers just kind of hanging out for ByuN. Does he have a Ghost Academy? No. Scattering the corrosive bile yet again. He could put the tanks in position, but then they'd be vulnerable to the same thing. In fact, knocks out the sensor tower, which is actually a bit cheaper, though has less radius now. Scan, looks for the Bane. Don't know if he noticed the full energy Vipers, but ByuN stimming forward. That is a lot of Marines, and the Banelings are closing in. Gonna try to pick them up. Evacuates the majority. And a double drop at the back. Roaches, the Roach defense team comes back to defend a little bit. Better late than never. Unfortunately, the Whittle Mine's also connected. He brings the tanks outside of the base, and then a questionable blinding cloud. The Viper's trying to help. Somewhat succeed. Knock down the medevac in the main. The Queens finally get their revenge. 33 more Banelings, though, as ByuN flatly refuses to get ghosts. Meanwhile, oh, the army caught between a rock and a hard place. A wave. Corrosive Bile gonna knock out some of the mines, but not nearly all. Looking to pull back. No tanks to back it up into. Parasitic Bomb doing a lot of damage, and Whittle Mine's helping out more. Oh no! ByuN plummets 50 supply near instantaneously. 1 Ultra down. But there's another one in the front, and now ByuN is getting crushed. The base has been cleared out. His entire style and strategy was reliant on keeping the momentum, keeping Shin back. But Shin charges forward and claims victory. 3-0. A decisive victory for Shin, showing the Ultras and the power they hold, especially over Terrans who are not really prepared for him. ByuN being his kind of stereotypical self, I will say. And, well, that brings us to our anti-spoiler bonus game. Bit of a different matchup, though, featuring at least half our players here. We have Shin versus Goblin. So, while I don't think that was exactly a decisive representation of what we can expect throughout the new patch and how players are going to play and the results of those games, still think a very solid back and forth Terran versus Zerg. At least 2 of those games pretty easily could have gone the other way. ByuN gets a little more damage done. Shin drops the ball against the drops. That was a sentence. But Shin holds on to it, and ByuN crumbles in a relatively predictable fashion, though a great demonstration of the power. So there's going to be a big asterisk here for me, though. This is one of the last tournaments on the PTR, not the live server. Though almost all of the changes are identical. The one, and it's a sizable one, that was not, is the Ultra is back to its original size. on the live server. That was one of the few changes made in the final iteration of the patch. So those ultras would probably be slightly less effective in each of those games. A little bit harder to make multiple ultras work because they're just, the technical term I believe is dummy thick. So the mothership also got the same treatment. So they're back. A few years ago, the Ultralisk diet plan was enabled, where the Ultra model size and hitbox were reduced by 15%. The idea being the Ultra has a tendency to get in the way of things. And Ultras are their own worst enemy when it comes to closing in on the enemy army. But with them now having the push priority and they don't walk over allied units because that creates issues with targeting, say, banelings underneath. Like if an Ultra was literally able to walk over banelings, it would become almost impossible to target fire those banes. But they now reliably push them out of the way before other units. So that does have quite an effect. But do I think the Ultras being larger and not quite as easily used would have changed the outcome of some of those games? I think maybe game 1 would have looked different. There's a chance beyond game 1 or 2, to be honest. Like, those were knife-edge games where even with the Ultra, Shin was barely able to get the damage done. But now, Zerg versus Protoss. Spore Crawlers doing extra damage means Oracles are more reliant on things like energy recharge in order to have some utility. It's almost impossible to actually fly into a mineral line and get out without risking your Oracle now. But with the energy recharge ability, the replacement for shield battery overcharge, you can have 100 more energy on that Oracle early, which means possibly multiple stasis wards. Another key point is the ability to cast Revelation, and then also light up your Oracle and clear creep, which is something you couldn't reliably do before. So you can now effectively use the Oracle as a very expensive way to launder 150 minerals and 150 gas into the unit's loss tab, or as a creep sweeper as well. Really depends. Lair and Roach Warren on the way, +1 and Blink. So, what we've seen so far, I don't know how long it'll keep up. There's our creep sweeping. Tag team option here. Unfortunately, didn't get the most outlying creep tumor, so the queens will get back to the spread. Where was I? I think I had a meta discussion that wasn't just like and subscribe, but you made it this far. You're even watching the bonus game. Thank you, by the way. And I am looking, if you happen to have some games, you can send them into winterreplays@gmail.com. Or, even better, on Discord, the Got Replays channel. Especially since the new patch has broken many of the old replays. Even the ones that were played technically on a version of the new patch. So we're going to be a little bit thin on the new games, at least until Home Story Cup plays out. And don't worry, if you've been watching Home Story, don't spoil it, but just heavily suggest certain matchups. I mean, Cyril and Maru are there, as is Clem. And I assume there's some Protoss who aren't Raynor and Clem as well, but... Goblin. In typical Goblin fashion. The beacon is lit, and rushing to Sky Toss seems to be the order of the day. Well, 10 swarm hosts for Shin up against a fleet beacon rush, and with the new mothership being unabductable, and Zerg really not having any better anti-air options, we're seeing even more rushing towards Sky Toss. But for now, well, we're going to have the Nidus Swarm Host. And the first wave is by far the most important. Nidus is done. Swarm Host, Sir Richard and his band of Swarm Host brethren. So, unfortunately, The oracles are just a few pixels away from that first Nidus. Mothership is being rushed. The very first thing, a mothership here. But it won't be out in time to stop the swarm host. Oh, he could definitely hear it. The stalkers, they have Blank. He blinks and he gets one. Gets an overlord, but a few of the locusts are split off to zone out the rest. And roaches and lings on the ground to hit the fourth base. A great wombo combo. Doesn't even go for the probes. He's just going for the nexus. I think he's gonna get it. Oh my. Shin knocks out 2 bases for the price of 1. Goblin now supply block, because losing 2 Nexi is quite a blow, as well as several pylons. Nobody saw that. All right. The swarm host down the center, actually using the relatively untouchable center area. Or not. More roaches and lings coming up. Mothership, still not done. Takes approximately 3 years to finish. Hasn't built any other fleet beacon. No carrier, no Tempest. Just the mothership so far. Blinkstalker's holding the line, but I feel like the swarm hosts are going to push him over it. Catches another stalker. Hops back in. Active cloaking. The locusts will redirect for their short lives. Time warp catches some. That mothership with the extra beams now. Kind of melting through some extra roaches. It can now attack up to 4 targets at once, which gives it a very cinematic look, though the mothership's still not, like, a real hard carry unit. Hydra's on the way. Overall, a good start for Shin, but Goblin still has 66 probes. Playing just defense doesn't seem like a great long-term option against a swarm host composition, but it feels like where Goblin is going. He's building another wave of cannons. He's getting a Templar archives. More locusts coming in towards the natural. He could just target the Nexus yet again. Not really much to stop him. The roaches and lings coming together. And Shin just dismantling Goblin so far, who's trying to survive, but he doesn't have... He just has the mothership. There's no carriers. He's working on Storm, but he doesn't have the sort of unit composition that allows you to sit back and turtle up. A mothership is not enough, unless I'm severely underestimating its power. Oh my. Huh. He targeted one changeling. It automatically targeted the rest, which is pretty sick. Fungal does not work. Wait, does Fungal work on a mothership? I think it'll damage it. I don't know if it'll slow it. Active recall on top. Microbial shroud to reduce mothership damage. Fungal's active cloak. Quite an array of little seed spells here. But the overseer count, well, the hydras, more locusts raining down. Goblin chasing down a lot of the infestors, though. 19 more hydras in production. Shield battery holds it together. Locust stalled out by stasis. Hydra is trading well with the stalkers. Still very much trendy in Shin's direction. He's going for nanomuscular swell and +3 ranged missile attacks. Meanwhile, Storm is nearly done for Goblin. Better late than never. As well as +3 ground weapons halfway there. But Shin has not slowed down economically at all. Another wave. Now, multiple stasis will actually negate that entire locust wave. So, well done. Goblin now with just a tiny bit of breathing room. But of course, that won't last long. Does he have energy recharge? A few more seconds. Pulling back. Energy recharge. Gets one storm. Doesn't quite get the other. Time warp. The mothership is knocked out of the sky. More storms, but the Templar are exposed. He desperately wants the Archons as well. Yeets away with the lunge ability. And now Goblin, he's losing probes. His army is mediocre. The reinforcements continue streaming across. Nidus Network, another wave of locusts raining down, staggering the locusts so they don't all get caught in stasis. And Goblin is just bleeding out. The heart of the swarm host is far too strong. A single... What are you doing out here, Tempest? Oh my! Lunges forward to try to take it out. But Goblin is knocked back down to 3 bases yet again. The Hydras and Lings coming together. Where Storm's helpful. Hydras and Lings still a 4 match for Mass Storm. I feel like he's just pressing it for the sake of it at some points. It's actually very hard to control because it just speeds you up so much for such a short amount of time. Oh, Micro's a few Hydras away. Getting real fancy about it. Lurkers in production. They already have range. And they're almost finished up with their speed burrow as well, so. The Lurkers at maximum power. Maximum supply. Almost +3 attack. And Goblin has been in quite a death animation here for the last, like, 8 minutes. Never got any damage done, really, on Shin's side of the map. Maybe a drone or 2 with the Oracles. He killed 5 drones in total. But the Lurkers are closing in. I'm not sure what Goblin's long-term prospects are, besides 2 Gs in quick succession. But here come the Swarm hosts yet again. Hydras. And more Templar. The Locust rain down. An Archon taken out. Trying to bait a Storm, or 4. And gets another Templar. I think Shin just having fun with the Hydra lunge. Oh no, the Lurkers. One feared up. The rest, a bit harder to deal with. Another revelation, but can't blame him for trying. But Goblin, this isn't the sort of unit composition that's going to drag you out of this precarious spot. Oh, gets close enough. The Swarm hosts are ready with another wave. He's long distance mining against Shin, who has 6 bases, so. Well, the Templar still dangerous. Dives forward, darts out of the storm. Repositioning, the probes are all dead. Shield battery recharged. And GG. Shin powers through in a decisive victory. Shin taking the finals 3-0, and this was part of the process to get there. But Goblin unable to really get anything going, and the Swarm host serving their purpose of picking things apart before the Protoss Death Ball can really be brought together. And Shin again looking a lot stronger. Still, his signature move of skipping adrenal glands, clearly not making the difference here today, as he claims a clean sweep over ByuN. And takes Wardy's tournament, which you should check out more of Wardy's tournaments with the link below if you have the opportunity. And, of course, if you got the means of motivation, would be awesome. Check out Patreon or YouTube membership. Helps out a lot having anything sort of consistent besides relying on algorithms and such. So, but otherwise, I hear liking and subscribing is still free, at least for now. So thank you for watching. I hope I made your day just a little bit better. I'll see you next time. Good luck. Have fun. Stay tuned.